Captain Jake Morrison stood in the command center of Luna Base, staring at the display screen that showed something no human had ever seen before. 3 massive alien ships hung in space just beyond Earth's moon, their dark metal hulls gleaming under the distant sun. Each ship was easily 10 times larger than anything humans had ever built. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission," said Lieutenant Amy Richardson from her station. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel as she tried to clean up the signal. "It's the same message they've been sending for the past 6 hours. Jake nodded and walked over to her station. The message had been playing on repeat since the ships arrived. A deep, growling voice spoke in perfect English, though the accent was unlike anything on Earth. The translation computers had worked overtime to decode the alien language, but somehow these beings already knew how to speak human languages. "People of this small world," the voice said. "We are the Ravenclaw Hunters. We have traveled across 47 star systems. We have conquered 47 worlds. Your planet is number 48. You have 1 rotation of your world to surrender. If you do not surrender, we will take your world by force. This is the only warning you will receive." The message ended, and silence filled the command center. Jake had heard it dozens of times now, but it still sent chills down his spine. He looked around at his crew. Some of them looked scared. Others looked angry. A few just looked confused. "Any word from Admiral Robert Chen on Earth?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir," Amy replied. "He's in an emergency meeting with world leaders. They're trying to decide how to respond." Jake walked back to the main display. The 3 alien ships had not moved since they arrived. They just sat there in space, waiting. Their ships looked like massive birds of prey, with sharp angles and weapon ports visible along their hulls. Everything about them screamed danger. Dr. Lisa Parker, the base's science officer, approached Jake with a datapad in her hands. "Captain, I've been analyzing the energy readings from their ships. The power levels are incredible. Each one of those ships could probably destroy every major city on Earth within hours." "What about their weapons?" Jake asked. "Unknown, but the energy signature suggests something far beyond our current technology. We're looking at weapons that could cut through our strongest shields like they're made of paper." Jake frowned. The situation was worse than he thought. Humanity had been preparing for the possibility of alien contact for decades, but they had always hoped the first aliens they met would be friendly. These Ravenclaw hunters definitely did not sound friendly. "Sir," Amy called out, "we're getting a call from Admiral Chen." The main screen flickered and Admiral Robert Chen appeared. He was sitting in what looked like an underground bunker, with military officials from around the world visible in the background. The Admiral looked tired and worried. "Jake," the Admiral said, "what's the status up there?" "The same as before, sir. 3 ships, no movement, same message repeating every hour. Dr. Parker says their technology is far ahead of ours." Admiral Chen nodded. "That's what our scientists down here are saying too. We've been discussing our options and frankly, we don't have many good ones." "What about fighting back?" Jake asked. "With what?" the Admiral replied. "Our most powerful weapons might scratch their paint. We could launch everything we have and it probably wouldn't even slow them down." The conversation was interrupted by an excited voice from across the command center. "Sir, Captain Morrison," called out Sergeant Maria Torres from the communications station. "The alien ships are doing something." Everyone turned to look at the main display. The 3 Ravenclaw ships were moving. They were not moving toward Earth, but they were changing position. They formed a triangle pattern around Luna Base. "They're surrounding us," Dr. Parker said quietly. "Sir," Amy reported, "we're receiving a new transmission. This one is different. It's addressed specifically to Luna Base." "Put it through," Jake ordered. The screen flickered and suddenly they were looking at an alien face. The creature was unlike anything humans had imagined. It looked somewhat like a cross between a wolf and an eagle with sharp teeth, piercing yellow eyes and feathers that looked more like metal scales. The alien wore what appeared to be armor made of the same dark metal as their ships. "Humans of the moon station," the alien said. Its voice was the same one they had been hearing in the recorded messages. "I am Threx Prime, leader of the Ravenclaw Hunters. We have observed your species for several rotations of your world. You are an interesting species. Jake stepped forward. I am Captain Jake Morrison, commander of this base. Why are you here? We are here to add your world to our collection, Threx Prime replied. But you humans have done something no other species has done. When we arrived, you did not immediately surrender. You also did not attack us with primitive weapons. You simply waited and watched. This is unusual. Maybe we're just being smart, Jake said. Threx Prime made a sound that might have been laughter. Perhaps. Or perhaps you do not understand what we are. We are the greatest hunters in the galaxy. We have never failed to take a world we wanted. We have defeated species with technology far greater than yours. We have crushed armies of millions. We have made entire civilizations bow before us. So why haven't you attacked Earth yet? Dr. Parker asked, stepping up beside Jake. Because, Threx Prime said, your species has intrigued us. Most species either run in fear or attack in desperation. You have done neither. Instead, you seem to be studying us. This suggests intelligence beyond what we expected from such a young species. Jake exchanged glances with his crew. The alien was right. Humanity had been studying them, learning everything they could about these Ravenclaw hunters. Every communication, every energy reading, every movement of their ships was being analyzed by scientists around the world. We propose something different, Threx Prime continued. Instead of simply taking your world, we will demonstrate why we are the masters of the hunt. We will show you why every species in the galaxy fears the Ravenclaw name. Then, when you understand our superiority, you will surrender willingly. What kind of demonstration? Jake asked. A hunt, Threx Prime replied. We will come to your world and hunt your greatest predators. We will show you how true hunters work. You may observe and learn. When you see our skills, you will understand that resistance is pointless. The alien's image disappeared, leaving the humans staring at a blank screen. The command center was silent for a long moment. Well, Dr. Parker said finally, that's not what I expected. Jake was thinking quickly. The aliens wanted to demonstrate their hunting abilities. They wanted humans to watch and learn. This could be an opportunity. If humans could observe these Ravenclaw hunters up close, they might learn something useful. They might find a weakness. Amy, Jake said, get me Admiral Chen. We need to discuss this proposal. As Amy worked to establish the connection, Jake looked back at the display showing the 3 alien ships. The Ravenclaw hunters thought they were offering humanity a lesson in fear. But maybe, just maybe, they were actually giving humanity something much more valuable. They were giving them a chance to learn how to beat the galaxy's greatest hunters. 3 days after the first contact, Marine Colonel David Wilson stood in the cold Alaskan wilderness, watching as strange alien ships landed in the distance. The ships touched down silently in a clearing about 2 miles from his position. Unlike human aircraft, they made no noise and left no burn marks on the frozen ground. This is crazy, whispered Sergeant Maria Torres, who was crouched beside him behind a fallen log. We're actually going to help aliens hunt bears. David adjusted his binoculars and studied the landing site. We're not helping them hunt, Maria. We're studying them. Every move they make, every weapon they use, every weakness they show. Command wants to know everything about these Ravenclaw hunters. The plan had taken 2 days to organize. World leaders had agreed to let the aliens demonstrate their hunting skills, but only under human supervision. David and his team would act as guides, showing the aliens where to find Earth's predators. What the aliens did not know was that every human guide was actually a trained military observer. Movement at the ships, Maria reported, looking through her own binoculars. David watched as several figures emerged from the alien craft. Even at this distance, he could see they were much larger than humans. They stood at least 8 feet tall and moved with a fluid grace that reminded him of big cats. Their metal-like feathers caught the sunlight as they gathered around their leader. That must be Threx Prime, David said, recognizing the largest of the group from the video transmissions. The Ravenclaw hunters began moving toward the human position. They covered the 2 miles of rough terrain in less than 15 minutes, moving faster than any human could run while making almost no sound. David had to admit their physical abilities were impressive. Humans, Threx Prime called out as his hunting party approached. We are ready to begin the demonstration. You will show us where your largest predators live. David stood up and stepped out from behind the log. I'm Colonel Wilson. This is Sergeant Torres. We'll be your guides today. He gestured toward the forest. There's a large grizzly bear territory about 3 miles north of here. Bears are among our biggest land predators. Bears, repeated another Ravenclaw hunter, whose name David learned was Crick's second. We have studied your databases. These creatures are primitive but large. They should provide adequate prey for a basic demonstration. David noticed how the aliens spoke about bears like they were simple targets rather than dangerous animals. These Ravenclaw hunters were clearly confident in their abilities, maybe too confident. Follow me, David said, and began walking north through the forest. As they moved through the trees, David observed everything about the aliens. They carried weapons that looked like a cross between rifles and energy tools. The weapons had no visible ammunition, which suggested they used some kind of energy beam. The aliens also wore devices on their wrists that occasionally beeped or flashed with lights. Those wrist devices, Maria whispered to David when the aliens were distracted by examining some tracks. They look like scanners of some kind. David nodded. He had noticed the same thing. Every few minutes, the aliens would check their wrist devices and change direction slightly. They were tracking something, probably using technology far more advanced than anything humans had. Dr. Kevin Adams, who was following the group as a wildlife expert, moved closer to David. Kevin was actually a xenobiologist working for military intelligence, but the aliens believed he was just a simple scientist studying animal behavior. Colonel, Kevin said quietly, I've been watching how they move. Their hearing seems incredibly sensitive. I've seen them react to sounds I can't even hear. But I noticed something interesting. When my radio crackled earlier, they all stopped and looked around like the sound confused them. Electronic interference, David realized. Maybe their enhanced senses don't work well with radio frequencies. Before they could discuss it further, Threx Prime held up a clawed hand. Silence. Humans. We have located our prey. The hunting party stopped moving. David looked around but saw nothing unusual. The forest looked the same as it had for the past hour. Trees, snow, and rocks. No sign of any bears. There, Crick Second pointed to a spot about 50 yards ahead. Large predator, moving slowly through the trees, unaware of our presence. David squinted and finally saw what the alien was pointing at. A massive grizzly bear was walking between the trees, probably looking for food before winter hibernation. The bear was indeed huge, easily weighing over 600 pounds. Impressive tracking, David said, and he meant it. He had not seen or heard the bear until the alien pointed it out. This is simple for us, Threx Prime replied. Watch and learn how true hunters work. The Ravenclaw leader raised his weapon and pointed it at the bear. The weapon made a soft humming sound, and David saw a faint blue glow appear around the barrel. The bear was still walking, completely unaware that it was being targeted. Wait, David said quickly. That bear is moving toward a stream. If you shoot it there, the body might fall into the water and be lost. Threx Prime looked at him with those piercing yellow eyes. Are you suggesting we are not capable of retrieving our prey? No, of course not, David replied. I'm just saying, it would be easier to collect it if it falls on dry ground. There's a clearing about 200 yards ahead where the bear will probably stop to look for berries. The alien leader considered this for a moment. Very well. We will follow your suggestion. You know this territory better than we do. What Threx Prime did not know was that David had studied this area for weeks before the aliens arrived. He knew exactly where every animal trail led and where predators liked to hunt. More importantly, he knew where Captain Susan Blake and her team were positioned with advanced recording equipment. The group followed the bear at a distance, staying downwind so it would not catch their scent. David was impressed by how quietly the aliens moved, but he also noticed they relied heavily on their electronic devices. Every few steps, they checked their scanners and adjusted their weapons. When they reached the clearing David had mentioned, the bear stopped exactly where he had predicted. It began searching through fallen logs, looking for insects and small animals to eat. "Perfect," Threx Prime said. "Now observe how the galaxy's greatest hunters take their prey." The alien raised his weapon again. This time, David was close enough to see details of how the technology worked. The weapon seemed to be scanning the bear, gathering information about its vital organs and weak points. A small display on the side showed what looked like a targeting system. "Remarkable accuracy," Dr. Adams commented, though he was actually memorizing every detail for his report. Threx Prime fired his weapon. A beam of bright blue energy struck the bear in the side. The massive animal collapsed instantly, without making a sound. The shot had been perfectly placed to cause immediate unconsciousness followed by death. "One shot, one kill," Crick2nd said proudly. "This is how Ravenclaw hunters work. We do not waste energy or create unnecessary suffering." David walked over to examine the bear. Though he was really studying the wound the alien weapon had created, the energy beam had left a small, perfectly round hole with no burns around the edges. Whatever technology they used, it was far more precise than human weapons. "Very impressive," David said, and again he was being honest. "I've never seen anything hunt with that level of accuracy." "This was a simple demonstration," Threx Prime replied. "Tomorrow we will show you how we hunt prey that fights back. We understand your world has large cats that are known for their aggression." David nodded. "African lions. They're much more dangerous than bears." "Excellent," the alien leader said. "We will travel to this Africa tomorrow. Today's hunt was merely practice. Tomorrow you will see what happens when the galaxy's apex predators face worthy opponents." As the aliens prepared to return to their ships with the bear's body, David exchanged glances with Maria and Kevin. The first hunt was over, and they had learned valuable information about Ravenclaw weapons and tactics. But David had a feeling the real test was yet to come. Tomorrow in Africa they would see what these alien hunters could really do. More importantly, the aliens would get their first taste of what humans could really do when they had time to prepare. The African savanna stretched endlessly under the burning sun. Tracker James Miller crouched in the tall grass, watching the Ravenclaw hunting party move across the landscape. 2 days had passed since the Alaska demonstration, and now they were in Kenya, preparing to hunt lions. "They're getting cocky," James whispered into his radio. The device was set to a frequency that seemed to interfere with the aliens' scanning equipment. "Threx Prime is barely checking his instruments anymore." Officer Rachel Davis, who was positioned 300 yards away with a full recording setup, responded quietly. "Copy that. We've documented 17 different behavioral changes since Alaska. They're definitely becoming overconfident." James had spent his entire adult life tracking animals across Africa. He knew every sound, every smell, and every sign. That meant danger in this land. But more importantly, he had spent the past week preparing this area for the alien hunt. Every trail had been studied, every water source mapped, and every lion pride located. "Humans," called Threx Prime from 50 yards away. "We are ready to locate the great cats of your world. Your databases show they are pack hunters with significant aggression." "That's right," James replied, standing up from his hiding spot in the grass. "Lions are much more dangerous than bears. They hunt in groups and they're fast, very fast." Crick2nd, who seemed to be Threx Prime's second in command, made a sound that might have been laughter. "Speed means nothing when you have superior technology. We have hunted creatures that move faster than your primitive cats could ever dream of moving." James nodded, but he was thinking about something else entirely. The aliens had not asked about the specific location of the lions. They assumed their scanners would find the prey easily, just like in Alaska. But James had chosen this particular area for a very specific reason. "The nearest pride is about 2 miles east," James said, pointing toward a group of acacia trees. "But I should warn you, the male lion in that pride is unusually aggressive. He's killed 3 other males in the past year. One aggressive cat against the greatest hunters in the galaxy," Threx Prime replied. "This will be over quickly." The hunting party began moving east, with James leading the way. What the aliens did not know was that Lieutenant Commander Michael Foster and his team had been working in this area for days. They had not hurt any animals, but they had carefully guided the lion pride's movements using sound and scent techniques that rangers used for wildlife management. As they walked, James noticed the aliens were checking their wrist scanners less frequently. In Alaska, they had checked the devices every few minutes. Now they seemed to assume their technology would alert them to any threats automatically. Dr. Adams made an interesting discovery yesterday. Rachel's voice came through James's earpiece. The aliens' enhanced hearing seems to focus on specific frequency ranges. They're incredibly sensitive to natural sounds, but they have trouble with certain electronic frequencies. James smiled. That explained why they had been having so many small equipment problems. Every time a human radio crackled or a GPS device beeped, the aliens looked confused and annoyed. After walking for an hour, the hunting party reached the area where James expected to find the lions. His timing was perfect. The pride was resting, in the shade of a large acacia tree exactly where he had predicted they would be. There, James pointed to the tree. 5 females and 1 large male. Threx Prime raised his scanning device and studied the lions. Impressive size. The male appears to weigh approximately 200 kilograms. The females are smaller, but there are more of them. Will you hunt the male or the females? James asked. The male, of course. We always take the strongest prey first. It demonstrates our superiority more effectively. James had hoped the alien would say that. The male lion in this pride was not just aggressive, he was smart. Rangers had been tracking him for 3 years, and he had learned to avoid humans and their equipment. More importantly, this particular lion had survived encounters with poachers, which meant he knew how to respond to threats with advanced technology. He's about 300 yards away, James said. Easy shot for your weapons. Threx Prime raised his energy weapon and activated the targeting system. The weapon hummed softly as it scanned the sleeping lion. But instead of firing immediately, the alien frowned at his display. Strange, he said. The targeting system is having difficulty locking onto the creature. Crick II checked his own device. I am experiencing the same problem. The readings keep changing. What the aliens did not realize was that James had positioned several small electronic devices around the area. The devices were disguised as rocks and logs, and they emitted very specific radio frequencies. The frequencies were too low for humans to hear, but they seemed to interfere with the aliens' technology. Maybe it's the heat, James suggested. The air temperature can cause problems with electronic equipment. Our technology does not malfunction due to primitive environmental conditions, Threx Prime replied, but he sounded less certain than before. The alien leader decided to move, closer to the lions. The hunting party crept forward, staying low in the tall grass. James noticed that the aliens were now moving more like humans, relying on their eyes and ears instead of their scanners. When they were about 100 yards from the lions, something unexpected happened. The male lion suddenly stood up and looked directly at the hunting party. His ears were forward and his body was tense. He had detected them. Impossible, whispered Crick II. We are downwind. He should not be able to sense our presence. James smiled again. The lion had not detected the aliens by smell or sight. He had heard the soft humming of their weapons charging. Lions had excellent hearing, and this particular male had learned to associate electronic sounds with danger. The lion let out a low warning growl, and the 5 females immediately became alert. Within seconds, the entire pride was on their feet and looking for threats. They know we are here, Threx Prime said. This is unexpected. Lions are smart, James replied. Much smarter than most people realize. The male lion began moving toward the hunting party. He was not running, but walking slowly and deliberately, the way lions do when they are deciding whether to attack or retreat. Behind him, the females were spreading out, surrounding the area where the hunters were hiding. They are attempting to flank us, Crick II observed. This behavior was not in your databases. Every lion pride is different, James said. This male has learned to be extra careful around anything that seems dangerous. Threx Prime raised his weapon again, but the targeting display was still flickering with interference. The male lion was now only 50 yards away and still approaching. The alien leader would have to take the shot soon or risk being charged by an angry lion. Take the shot, Crick II urged. Threx Prime fired his energy weapon. The blue beam struck the male lion in the shoulder, but instead of dropping immediately like the bear had, the lion staggered and then let out a roar of pain and fury. The shot was not precise enough, Threx Prime said, sounding surprised. The interference affected the targeting system. The wounded lion charged directly at the hunting party. Behind him, the 5 females also began running toward the aliens. James had seen enough lion charges to know they had about 10 seconds before the pride reached their position. "Run!" James shouted, and he took off running toward a cluster of rocks about 50 yards away. The Ravenclaw hunters hesitated for a moment, clearly not used to retreating from prey, but when they saw 6 angry lions charging toward them, they decided running was a good idea. The aliens were fast, much faster than humans, but they were not faster than lions. The male lion, despite his wound, was closing the distance quickly. The females were spreading out to cut off escape routes. James reached the rocks first and scrambled up to safety. The aliens arrived a few seconds later, jumping onto the rocks with their superior athletic ability. The lions circled the rocks, roaring and pacing, but they could not climb up to reach their targets. This was not supposed to happen. Crick second, panted. Our weapons should have neutralized the threat immediately. The interference affected our targeting, Threx Prime replied. We must adapt our tactics. James looked down at the circling lions and then at the confused aliens. For the first time since the demonstration began, the Ravenclaw hunters looked uncertain. They were starting to realize that hunting on Earth was not going to be as easy as they had expected. Don't worry, James said. This happens sometimes when hunting lions. The important thing is that we learned something today. What he did not say was that humans had learned far more than the aliens realized. They had discovered that Ravenclaw technology could be disrupted, that the aliens could be caught off guard, and most importantly, that the galaxy's greatest hunters were not as unstoppable as they believed. The Amazon rainforest was alive with sounds that most humans could barely hear. Sergeant Tony Garcia crouched on a platform 30 feet above the jungle floor, watching the Ravenclaw hunting party move through the trees below. 3 weeks had passed since the lion incident in Africa, and the aliens were no longer as confident as they had been. They're checking their scanners every 30 seconds now, Tony whispered into his throat microphone. Completely different behavior from the first hunt. Dr. Jennifer Lee, who was monitoring the hunt from a research station 2 miles away, responded through Tony's earpiece. That's because they're finally starting to understand they're not hunting animals anymore. They're being hunted. Tony smiled at that comment. For the past 2 weeks, while the aliens rested and planned their next demonstration, humans had been working around the clock. Every scientist, military expert, and wildlife specialist on the planet had been studying the recorded data from Alaska and Africa. They had learned incredible amounts about Ravenclaw technology, behavior, and most importantly, their weaknesses. Humans, called Threx Prime from the jungle floor below. We are ready to hunt your jungle cats. We understand they are called jaguars and are known for their stealth. Commander Paul Anderson, who was acting as the guide for this hunt, dropped down from his platform using a rope. That's right. Jaguars are probably the most dangerous cats we have. They're incredibly strong and they're excellent at ambush hunting. After our experience with the lions, Crick Second said, we have adjusted our hunting strategy. We will not underestimate your predators again. Tony almost laughed out loud. The aliens thought the problem in Africa had been underestimating the lions. They still did not realize that humans had been manipulating every aspect of the hunt. The electronic interference, the lions' unusual behavior, even the timing of the whole encounter had been carefully planned. The nearest jaguar territory is about a mile north, Paul said, pointing deeper into the rainforest. But I should warn you, this jungle is much more dangerous than the African savanna. It's easy to get lost, and there are many other predators. Besides jaguars, we are not concerned about getting lost, Threx Prime replied. Our navigation systems are far superior to anything your species possesses. What the alien leader did not know was that the humans had spent 3 weeks turning this section of rainforest into the most sophisticated trap ever created. Every tree, every trail, and every sound had been carefully planned. Tony and his team had not hurt any animals, but they had learned to influence jaguar behavior using techniques developed over centuries of living in the jungle. The hunting party began moving north through the dense vegetation. Tony noticed that the aliens were having much more difficulty moving through the rainforest than they had in Alaska or Africa. Their large size and metallic feathers made them easy to spot and caused them to get caught on branches and vines. "This environment is challenging," admitted Crick II after getting his weapon caught on a hanging vine for the third time. "The jungle takes practice," Paul replied. "Indigenous people spend years learning to move through terrain like this." As they walked deeper into the rainforest, Tony observed that the aliens were relying more heavily on their technology than ever before. They checked their scanners constantly and adjusted their weapons every few minutes, but their technology was still being affected by the electronic interference devices that humans had hidden throughout the area. "Movement ahead," announced one of the younger Ravenclaw hunters whose name Tony had learned was Vex III. "Large predator, approximately 100 meters north." Tony looked in the direction the alien was pointing but saw nothing. However, he knew exactly what the alien had detected. Maria Santos, one of the world's best jaguar researchers, had been working with a particular female jaguar for months. The jaguar had been trained to move through specific areas at specific times using food rewards and scent trails. "That's probably Luna," Paul said, using the name Maria had given to the jaguar. "She's one of the largest females in this territory, about 120 pounds and extremely intelligent." 120 pounds, Threx Prime repeated, much smaller than the African lions. This should be a simple hunt. Tony wished he could see the alien's face when he realized just how wrong that assumption was. Jaguars might be smaller than lions, but they were much smarter and far better at stealth hunting. More importantly, this particular jaguar had been trained to respond to specific signals that humans would provide during the hunt. The hunting party crept forward through the jungle. Tony noticed that the aliens were making much more noise than they realized. Their metal feathers scraped against branches, their heavy footsteps broke twigs, and their weapons hummed constantly as they scanned for targets. "There," Crick II pointed to a spot about 70 yards ahead. "The jaguar is resting on a fallen log near the stream." Tony looked carefully and finally spotted Luna. The jaguar was lying in a patch of sunlight looking completely relaxed. But Tony knew that Maria was positioned nearby with equipment that could signal the jaguar to move in any direction needed. "Perfect position for a clean shot," Paul commented. "She's completely unaware of your presence." Threx Prime raised his energy weapon and activated the targeting system, but immediately his display began flickering with interference. The targeting system could not lock onto the jaguar properly. "The same problem as in Africa," the alien leader muttered. "Something is interfering with our equipment." "Maybe it's the humidity," Tony suggested from his position in the trees above. "The Amazon has very high moisture levels. Our technology is designed to function in any environment," Threx Prime replied, but he sounded frustrated. The alien decided to move closer to get a better targeting lock. The hunting party crept forward until they were about 30 yards from the resting jaguar. At this distance, even with interference, the shot should be easy, but as soon as they moved into position, Luna suddenly stood up and looked directly at them. Her ears were forward and her body was tense. She had detected the hunting party. "Impossible," whispered Vex III. "We made no sound. She should not know we are here." What the alien did not realize was that Maria had signaled the jaguar using a device that made sounds too low for human ears to hear. Jaguars had excellent hearing and could detect frequencies that most other animals could not hear. Luna began, moving away from the hunting party, but she was not running. Instead, she was moving slowly and quietly, the way jaguars do when they are hunting. She seemed to be leading the aliens deeper into the jungle. "She's trying to escape," Crick II observed. "We should take the shot now before she disappears." "Wait," Paul said. "If you miss the shot, she'll disappear into the jungle and you'll never find her again. Jaguars are masters of camouflage. Let me try to predict where she's going." Threx Prime hesitated, then nodded. "Very well. But if we lose this prey because of your advice, the demonstration ends and we begin the conquest of your world." Paul studied the direction Luna was moving and then pointed to a clearing about 200 yards ahead. She's heading for her favorite hunting spot. There's a small clearing where she likes to watch for prey. If we circle around, we can get ahead of her. The alien leader agreed to try Paul's suggestion. The hunting party began moving through the jungle, trying to reach the clearing before the jaguar. But as they moved, Tony noticed that they were being led exactly where the humans wanted them to go. The clearing Paul had mentioned was real, but it was also the center of the most sophisticated trap humans had ever created. Motion sensors, cameras, and electronic interference devices were hidden in every tree. More importantly, 3 other jaguars were positioned around the clearing, waiting for Maria's signal. When the Ravenclaw hunters reached the clearing, they found Luna waiting for them. She was sitting in the center of the open area, completely still, as if she was posing for the perfect shot. "Excellent," Threx Prime said. "Now we have a clear target with no interference." But as he raised his weapon, something unexpected happened. Luna let out a low coughing sound, which was the jaguar's way of communicating. Immediately, the jungle around the clearing came alive with sounds. 3 more jaguars appeared from different directions. They did not attack, but they began circling the clearing, making the coughing sounds that jaguars use to communicate with each other. The aliens suddenly found themselves surrounded by 4 of the jungle's most dangerous predators. "This behavior is not documented in your databases," Crick II said nervously. "Jaguars are supposed to be solitary hunters." "They usually are," Paul replied with a smile. "But these 4 have learned to work together when they face a common threat." Threx Prime tried to target Luna with his weapon, but the other jaguars were moving constantly, making it impossible to get a clear shot without risk of hitting the wrong target. Worse, his targeting system was being affected by interference from all the hidden devices. "Take any shot," Vex III urged. "We cannot let them escape." But before Threx Prime could fire, all 4 jaguars suddenly disappeared into the jungle. They moved so quickly and quietly that even the aliens' enhanced senses lost track of them immediately. But before Threx Prime could fire, all 4 jaguars suddenly disappeared into the jungle. They moved so quickly and quietly that even the aliens' enhanced senses lost track of them immediately. The hunting party stood in the empty clearing, looking around in confusion. The jaguars had vanished completely, leaving no trace of their presence. "Where did they go?" Crick II demanded. "They're still here," Paul said calmly. "Jaguars don't leave their territory. They're watching us right now, deciding whether we're a threat or just passing through." For the next hour, the aliens searched the jungle around the clearing. Their scanners detected movement constantly, but every time they investigated, they found nothing. The jaguars were using their natural camouflage and stealth abilities to stay hidden, while keeping the aliens under constant observation. Finally, Threx Prime admitted defeat. "These creatures are more skilled than we anticipated. We will return tomorrow with different tactics." As the aliens returned to their ships, Tony climbed down from his observation post and met with Paul and Maria. The 3 humans walked back toward their base camp, discussing what they had observed. "They're starting to realize they're out of their element," Maria commented. "Those jaguars played their part perfectly." "More than that," Paul replied. "The aliens are beginning to understand that Earth's predators don't follow the rules they're used to. Every hunt has been different from what they expected." Tony nodded. "And they still don't realize that we've been 3 steps ahead of them the entire time. They think they're dealing with unusually smart animals. They have no idea they're actually facing the most dangerous predators on Earth. Humans," Maria said with a grin. "Exactly," Paul replied. "Tomorrow we show them what happens when the galaxy's greatest hunters meet Earth's greatest hunters, and it's not going to be pretty for them." The Arctic wind cut through the frozen landscape like a knife, but Captain Emma Thompson felt comfortable in her cold weather gear. She had spent years training in environments like this, learning survival techniques that had been passed down through generations of Arctic explorers. 20 yards away, the Ravenclaw hunting party was struggling with the brutal cold despite their advanced technology. "The temperature is affecting our equipment efficiency," Crick II reported to Threx Prime. His voice carried clearly across the frozen ground, but Emma could hear the discomfort in his tone. "Our technology is designed for all environments," Threx Prime replied. but even his voice sounded strained. "We have hunted on ice worlds far colder than this." Emma smiled to herself. The aliens might have hunted on colder worlds, but they had never faced the specific challenges of Earth's Arctic. More importantly, they had never faced humans who had been preparing for this moment for months. This was the fourth and final hunting demonstration. After the problems in Alaska, Africa, and the Amazon, the Ravenclaw hunters had requested one more chance to prove their superiority. They wanted to hunt polar bears in the Arctic, believing that the simple, cold environment would eliminate the complications they had faced in the jungle. What they did not know was that this hunt would be different from all the others. This time, the humans were not going to hide their involvement. This time, they were going to show the aliens exactly what Earth's apex predators could really do. "The nearest polar bear territory is about 3 miles north," Emma said, pointing across the frozen landscape. "But I should warn you, Arctic hunting is completely different from hunting in other environments." Major Chris Johnson, who was serving as the secondary guide, nodded in agreement. "The cold affects everything: equipment, movement, even thinking. And polar bears are much more dangerous than any of the animals you've hunted so far. We have adapted our weapons for cold weather operation," Vex Third announced, "and our thermal scanners will make it easy to locate warm-blooded prey in this environment." Emma and Chris exchanged a quick glance. The aliens were still thinking like hunters from other worlds. They had not learned the most important lesson about hunting on Earth. The environment itself was part of the hunt. The group began moving north across the frozen ground. Emma noticed immediately that the aliens were having serious problems with the cold. Their metal feathers were conducting heat away from their bodies, and their electronic equipment was working much more slowly than normal. "Is the cold affecting your people?" Emma asked after watching Threx Prime stumble on the uneven ice. "Ravenclaw hunters adapt to any environment," the alien leader replied. But Emma could see frost forming on his weapon, and his breathing was creating large clouds of vapor. What the aliens did not realize was that Emma and her team had been living in this area for 2 weeks, acclimatizing to the extreme conditions. They had also been working with Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a scientist who specialized in human endurance and cold weather survival. "Thermal signature detected," announced one of the aliens. "Large creature, approximately 2 kilometers ahead." Emma looked in the direction the alien was pointing but saw nothing but white snow and ice. However, she knew exactly what they had detected. Ben Parker, a wildlife expert who had spent years studying polar bears, had been tracking a large male bear for several days. The bear was exactly where Ben had predicted it would be. "That's probably Big Mike," Emma said, using the name Ben had given to the bear. "He's one of the largest males in this region. Probably weighs close to 800 pounds. 800 pounds, Threx Prime repeated. "Larger than any prey we have hunted on your world so far." "Polar bears are not just large," Chris added. "They're incredibly strong and they're perfectly adapted to this environment. They can run across ice that would not support human weight, and they can swim in water that would kill a person in minutes." The Pooh hunting party continued moving north, but Emma noticed that the aliens were slowing down significantly. The cold was affecting them much more than they wanted to admit. Their thermal scanners were working, but their targeting systems were experiencing problems similar to what had happened in the jungle. "There," Crick Second pointed to a spot about 400 yards ahead. "The bear is moving along the edge of the ice shelf." Emma looked carefully and spotted Big Mike. The massive polar bear was walking slowly along the edge of the frozen ocean, probably looking for seals. He was completely unaware that he was being watched by alien hunters. "Perfect position," Threx Prime said. "Open ground, clear line of sight, no complications like we experienced in the jungle." But Emma knew something the aliens did not. Ben Parker was not just tracking the bear randomly. For the past week, he had been using food lures and scent trails to guide Big Mike to this exact location at this exact time. More importantly, Ben had been teaching the bear to associate certain sounds with food rewards. "You'll want to be very quiet," Emma whispered. "Polar bears have excellent hearing, and this one is particularly alert." Threx Prime raised his energy weapon and activated the targeting system. The weapon hummed softly as it scanned the distant bear, but Emma noticed that the humming sound was different from what she had heard during previous hunts. The cold was affecting the weapon's performance. Targeting system is functioning at 70% efficiency, the alien leader reported. The cold is interfering with our electronics. That's why Arctic hunting is so difficult, Chris replied. The environment is as much your enemy as any predator. What happened next surprised even Emma. Instead of waiting for the perfect shot, Threx Prime decided to move closer to the bear. But as the hunting party began approaching across the open ice, Big Mike suddenly stopped walking and turned to look directly at them. He sees us, Vex Third observed. Distance is approximately 300 meters, still within effective range, but Big Mike did not run away like the other animals had when they detected the hunters. Instead, the massive bear began walking directly toward the alien hunting party. His movement was slow and deliberate, the confident walk of an animal that had never met anything it could not handle. This behavior is unusual, Crick Second said nervously. The bear should be fleeing from superior predators. Polar bears don't really have natural predators, Emma replied. They're used to being the most dangerous thing in their environment. The bear continued approaching. At 200 yards, Emma could see that Big Mike was enormous, even for a polar bear. His thick white fur made him look like a walking mountain of muscle and fat. More importantly, she could see the intelligent look in his dark eyes. This bear was not just approaching randomly. He was evaluating the threat and deciding how to respond. Take the shot, Crick Second urged. The range is still acceptable. Threx Prime fired his energy weapon. The blue beam struck the polar bear, in the shoulder exactly where it had hit the other animals during previous hunts. But instead of collapsing like the grizzly bear or staggering like the lion, Big Mike just shook his head and continued walking toward the hunters. Impossible, Threx Prime said. The shot was perfectly placed. Polar bears have incredibly thick fat layers for insulation, Emma explained. Your weapon probably didn't penetrate deep enough to cause serious damage. The alien leader fired again, this time aiming for the bear's chest. The second energy beam struck the bear, causing him to stumble slightly, but he did not fall. Instead, Big Mike let out a roar that echoed across the frozen landscape and began running toward the hunting party. 800 pounds of muscle, and fat running at 30 miles per hour across ice, Chris commented. You might want to consider retreat. The aliens looked at each other uncertainly. They had never faced prey that could survive multiple hits from their weapons. Worse, they were standing on ice that was becoming more unstable as the bear approached. Our weapons are not functioning at full efficiency, Threx Prime admitted. The cold is affecting power output. Big Mike was now less than 100 yards away and closing fast. The ice beneath the hunting party was beginning to crack under the combined weight of the bear and the vibrations from his running. We need to move, Emma said urgently. This ice won't support all of us much longer. But as the aliens tried to retreat, they discovered another problem. Their metal feathers and heavy equipment made them much heavier than humans. The ice that could easily support Emma and Chris was cracking dangerously under the aliens' weight. The ice is unstable, Crick Second reported as a large crack appeared between his feet. Big Mike was now 50 yards away, and Emma could see the determination in the bear's eyes. This was not just an angry animal. This was an intelligent predator that had decided the aliens represented a threat to his territory. Jump to the thicker ice, Emma shouted, pointing to a section of frozen ocean that looked more stable. Emma and Chris made the jump easily, their experience with Arctic conditions allowing them to judge the ice strength accurately. The aliens tried to follow, but their greater weight and unfamiliarity with ice conditions made the jump much more dangerous. Vex Third made it across safely, but Crick Second landed hard and immediately crashed through the ice into the freezing water below. Threx Prime barely caught the edge of the stable ice with his claws. Help him, Threx Prime gasped as he struggled to pull himself out of the water. Emma did not hesitate. Despite everything that had happened, she was not going to let anyone die in the Arctic. She grabbed Threx Prime's arm and helped pull him onto the stable ice, then worked with Chris to rescue Crick Second from the freezing water. Meanwhile, Big Mike had stopped his charge and was standing on the edge of the broken ice, watching the aliens with obvious intelligence. The bear seemed to understand that the threat had been neutralized without him needing to attack. "Your weapons," Emma said, as she helped Threx Prime remove his wet equipment. "They're not designed for extreme cold. The power cells are affected by temperature, and your targeting systems can't function properly when there's ice forming on the sensors." Threx Prime looked at his damaged weapon, then at the polar bear that was still watching them from 50 yards away, and finally at Emma, who had just saved his life despite having every reason to let him die. "You knew this would happen," he said quietly. "You knew our weapons would not work properly in the cold. You knew the bear would not be stopped by normal shots. You knew the ice was unstable." Emma met his gaze steadily. "I knew that the Arctic is one of the most dangerous environments on Earth. I also knew that survival here requires more than advanced technology. It requires understanding the environment, respecting the predators, and working together." "You saved my life," Threx Prime said. "Even after we threatened your world, you saved my life." "That's what humans do," Chris replied. "We help each other survive." For the first time since the demonstrations began, Threx Prime looked at the humans with something that might have been respect. "We have underestimated your species," he admitted. "We believed superior technology made us superior hunters, but you have shown us that true hunting requires much more than weapons and scanners." Emma helped the shivering alien to his feet. "The hunt isn't about killing, Threx Prime. It's about understanding. The best hunters don't just track their prey, they understand the environment. They respect their opponents, and they know when not to hunt at all." As they made their way back toward the alien ships, Big Mike followed at a distance, still watching but no longer threatening. The polar bear seemed to understand that the immediate danger was over, but he wanted to make sure the strangers left his territory. "Your polar bear is still following us," Vex Third observed nervously. "He's making sure we leave peacefully," Emma explained. "Bears are smart enough to know the difference between a threat and visitors who are just passing through." Threx Prime was quiet for most of the journey back to the ships, but just before they reached the landing site, he turned to Emma with a question that changed everything. "You have been teaching us, haven't you?" he asked. "All of these hunts, all of these demonstrations, you have been showing us that we are not the galaxy's greatest hunters. You are." Emma smiled. "We've been showing you that being a great hunter isn't about having the best weapons or the strongest body. It's about being smart enough to understand your environment, patient enough to wait for the right moment, and wise enough to know that sometimes the best hunt is the one you don't take." "And you have been hunting us," Threx Prime said, understanding, finally dawning. "From the moment we arrived, you have been studying us, learning our weaknesses and demonstrating your superiority. We thought we were teaching you to fear us, but you were teaching us to respect you." "Now you're beginning to understand," Emma replied. "Welcome to Earth, Threx Prime. You've just met the real apex predators." Admiral Patricia Walsh stood in the conference room aboard the orbital station, looking at the most unusual gathering in human history. Around the large table sat representatives from every major nation on Earth, along with 3 Ravenclaw hunters who just weeks ago had been planning to conquer the planet. Threx Prime sat across from her, no longer wearing the intimidating armor he had worn during the hunting demonstrations. Instead, he wore simple clothing that made him look less like a conquering warrior and more like a curious visitor. His yellow eyes, which had once seemed threatening, now showed genuine interest as he studied the human negotiators.